In the future, the USA has been devastated by a severe drought, leading people to kill for water. Most have fled, but the Home family remains, clinging to hope. Ernest Home, the father, believes the land will thrive again with enough water. He reminisces about the once green landscape, unlike his son Jerome, who has never seen it. One day, two thieves attempt to break into a building on Ernest's farm by burning the lock. Ernest catches them in the act and fires his gun, killing one thief who tries to shoot back. The second thief begs for mercy, claiming he was misled into thinking there was water in the building. He pretends to need to pee, but reaches for a gun, prompting Ernest to shoot him too. Jerome witnesses the scene from a distance and offers to help, but Ernest insists Jerome call him Dad instead of his first name. Ernest unlocks the small building, revealing a pump, but it yields no water. They force their meal to continue without drinking. On their journey, they encounter the watermen, who monopolize water distribution through a government deal. Ernest trades supplies for water, warning Jerome not to provoke them as they are dangerous. Ernest often tries to negotiate water for his farm, but the watermen's prices are too high. Returning home, their mule collapses and is severely injured. Ernest mercifully shoots the animal to end its suffering, leaving Jerome in tears but determined. Back at the farm, Jerome's sister Mary serves them MRS and scrubs dishes with soil, while Ernest listens to the radio and Jerome sketches animals' simple hobbies in their harsh reality. Ernest hears a noise and discovers Mary has sneaked out to meet her secret boyfriend. The next day, Jerome and Ernest visit Sam's auction house, hoping to bid on a robot named Simulate Shadow, or Sim, to replace their mule. Sam's son, Flem, bids against them, but Ernest wins the auction, worsening his debt. They visit the hospital where the kid's mother, Catherine, is recovering from an accident that left her unable to walk. The hospital has a machine that helps her walk, but it's expensive and the family cannot afford it. After a pleasant visit with Catherine, Ernest and Jerome head home. On the road, they encounter Robbie and Suze with their baby. Ernest derogatorily calls them vultures for using their child to garner sympathy for handouts, but later, feeling pity, he returns with some water for them. Robbie and Suze are considering selling their baby due to financial struggles, but Ernest advises against it and promises to help with water. Back at the farm, Flem arrives, revealing himself as Mary's secret boyfriend. He asks to borrow Sim and promises to pay rent, but Ernest refuses unless Sam guarantees the deal. Offended, Flem leaves, declaring that Ernest will never irrigate his land. The next time Ernest and Jerome meet the watermen, Sim helps them make good time. Ernest tries to negotiate a deal for a water line to his farm. Later, he starts digging out his old pump so the watermen can inspect it. While working, he advises Jerome to socialize and meet girls, but Jerome is focused on caring for the family. On their way home, they see Flem speeding by. At the farm, Mary anxiously waits. Mary is washing clothes using a cleaning agent in a vacuum cleaner when Ernest arrives and forbids her from going out anymore. Mary lashes out, claiming she's old enough to do what she wants. Ernest insists he wants to protect her, but Mary accuses him of hating her and loving Flem. She attempts to run away, bumping into Jerome and asking for money, giving Ernest time to catch up and stop her. Mary cries, accusing Ernest of failing their family. In response, Ernest locks her up and nails her window shut. Later, Ernest and Jerome discover that Sim has been stolen. Ernest suspects Flem and goes to his house, but Sam reveals that Flem left for the mountains that morning. It's revealed that Ernest's farm used to belong to Sam, and Flem is obsessed with reclaiming what his family lost, though Sam believes the land is infertile and water won't help. Ernest heads to the mountains to investigate, but is suddenly knocked out. He wakes up at the watermen's camp, where he's accused of stealing their supplies using Sim. Ernest denies it, but Caleb, the leader, attacks him. After a struggle, Ernest steals Caleb's knife and rifle, firing a shot into the air to keep everyone back. He escapes, with Caleb shouting threats after him. On his way home, Ernest finds Flem sleeping by a fire with Sim nearby. Flem stole the machine and supplies to frame Ernest. At dawn, Ernest wakes Flem by pointing a rifle at his face, then ties him to Sim, which is carrying the supply. They walk under the hot sun to find the waterman, and Flem taunts Ernest by talking about Mary. In anger, Ernest pulls the rope, making Flem fall as punishment. Eventually, they are both too thirsty to continue, and Flem convinces Ernest to stop for a drink. The supplies contain alcohol, not water, exacerbating their dire situation. Ernest soon gets drunk due to his addiction, while Flem pretends to drink and claims he stole the machine to survive because Caleb wants his head. He offers Ernest money, but Ernest, suspicious, refuses. When Ernest tries to stand, the alcohol makes him dizzy and immobile. This was Flem's plan all along, and he takes the opportunity to hit Ernest with a rock, causing him to fall and hit his head on a cliff. As he bleeds and falls unconscious, Ernest flashes back to Catherine's car accident caused by his drinking. When Ernest wakes up, he's tied to Sim, and Flem pours more alcohol into his mouth, screaming maniacally. Flem then heads to the farm, where Mary jumps on his bike to escape with him. Worried about Ernest, Jerome goes looking for him. By nightfall, he finds Sim at the waterman's camp, where they tell him that his dad died in an accident with the machine. At Ernest's funeral, Mary returns and the siblings cry together. They visit their mom to break the bad news. Flem picks them up in his truck and takes them home. At the farm, a furious Jerome starts hitting Sim with a hammer, but Flem stops him, explaining that grief is hard but they can't ruin a source of income. Flem offers to become the head of the family to help the siblings and shocks Jerome by announcing that Mary is pregnant. Flem has big plans for the farm, and Jerome agrees to let him try. In the afternoon, Flem takes supplies to the waterman and asks Caleb to put a water pipe on the farm. Initially, Caleb refuses, but Flem then blames Caleb for Ernest's death since Caleb's rifle and knife were found with the body. Fearing the consequences, Caleb agrees to divert water to the siblings' land. A few days later, the new farm pump is officially installed, and Flem works tirelessly planting and growing wheat, watered by sprinklers. The family can now enjoy actual showers. Weeks later, Jerome is surprised to see a small leaf on the ground, and eventually the land becomes covered in lush plants. To celebrate, Flem and Mary get married and tattoo each other's initials on their hands. During the party, Flem drinks heavily, haunted by thoughts of Ernest's death. A few days later, Sam arrives at the farm with two bank representatives. Ernest's debt is substantial, and they demand Flem pay it. To appear tough, Flem scares the horses with his bike, but Sam chastises him, explaining that no one wanted the land and Ernest only kept it because he never left. With water and crops, the bank can now sell it, so Flem must pay to keep it. Jerome returns home, pretending everything is normal, and asks Flem how he got Sim back. Flem, confused, checks the barn and is shocked to see Sim and damaged. He speculates that Robbie must have returned it out of guilt. A few days later, Jerome visits Catherine and promises to take care of her like Ernest did. One afternoon, Jerome, knowing the truth about Flem, begins to plan his next steps to protect his family and their future. Flem and Jerome hunt animals to protect the crops. Flem misses all his shots and hands the rifle to Jerome, blaming the weapon. Jerome, tempted to shoot Flem, instead kills a deer, proving Flem's aim is the problem. At home, Jerome hides the rifle in his room. During lunch, Jerome claims Robbie called looking for Flem. Flem, agitated, accuses Jerome of lying. Mary scolds Flem, and Jerome insists he's telling the truth, causing Flem to storm out. The next day, Flem receives a letter forged by Jerome, pretending to be Robbie, asking for a meeting at the cliffs. Before leaving, Flem looks for the rifle. Jerome lies, saying he took it for repairs since Flem said it was faulty. Forced to play along, Flem apologizes for his outburst and grabs a knife before heading to the cliffs with Sim, calling out for Robbie. Suddenly, he falls into a hidden pit, breaking his legs. He screams in pain and begs Sim for help, but the machine doesn't understand. Jerome arrives and silently watches Flem with a rock in his hand, revealing he knows the truth. Desperate, Flem pleads for mercy, but Jerome coldly watches him suffer under the burning sun. Eventually, Flem screams for help again, begging Jerome to consider his sister and the baby. He delivers a speech about accidents and regret, enraging Jerome. Overcome with anger, Jerome finally shoots Flem, killing him. Returning home, Jerome lets Mary believe Flem abandoned her and hides the truth about Ernest's death. With money from the crops, the siblings can afford real food and agree to buy the machine needed